everyone, I'm so glad to have you on my channel today. We are going to be looking at 3 different ways to use cover dies or cover plate dies. This is the main die that we're going to be using. It's called the Heart Pains cover plate, and you see it's the size of an A2 card. I'm going to show you 3 different ways that you can use just this die and create some amazing cards. We'll be looking at some other parts of the new release, including this wonderful mirror ball paper with these 2 sentiment sets, You're My Gal and Love You Greetings. The first card, we're going to create a shaker card without using foam tape. And you may wonder, why in the world did I not use any foam tape? Let me show you how skinny these lines are. I do not own any foam tape that will fit behind those without you seeing it from the sides. So I decided to create a lot of cutouts. I grabbed all my scraps and I cut out this die multiple times, and then I'm going to glue it to itself to create a window. So I need to have enough height that I can fit shaker bits. So I'm going to start with 4 pieces and we'll see how high that is compared to the little shaker pieces or sequins that I'm going to put in there. If that's enough space, yay. If not, we may add 1 more just to be safe, but 4 is about right for the flat sequins that I'm going to be using. A tip for gluing this many pieces together that all need to line up is to start from an area and then work your way across, making sure that everything's lined up. So I pinch it on both sides to make sure it's sticking. I also don't use a ton of glue, but I feel like glue makes it easier because glue you can move around the die if you're off a little bit, and it really does make a difference if you want it to look very neat that everything is stacked up perfectly. So I cut out 1 more of Bristol Smooth so that we can make our beautiful colors. You could do this with any type of ink, or you could just use colored cardstock, but you just have to use so much colored cardstock unless you're making multiples. I don't like to waste the pieces, so I'm just using my Catherine Pooler ink pads and I'm coloring this piece. So you could also do something like ink blend it to give it a little bit more definition and a little difference, but I'm just going to color the pieces and pretty much keep it simple because that shaker card has such a great look to it that I don't know that you would notice spending a whole lot of time ink blending. A tip for keeping rainbows in order is to set your pieces in order. So I've set my pieces how they fit into the cover plate die, and I've put them in order so that I make sure I'm not messing up the rainbow. So I'm going to do each of these pieces and then we're going to put this shaker card together. So you see that I am using a lot of different colors. I could have repeated colors, that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to do a lot of different colors to give this lots of excitement. So I'm using this whole set's called Spring Fling. It's the mini set of Catherine Pooler. So I'm using that and I'm going to use 2 different color purples, and then we are going to put this shaker card together. So when I cut my pieces out of Bristol Smooth, I had this outline of the cover plate, and so I'm going to use this to help kind of do an inlaid die technique to get all of my colored pieces back where they're supposed to go. So that will make the height of my middle, once I add the others, 5 of these cutouts high, just so you know how many I'm using. Before I glue all these pieces down, I'm going to check and make sure that these sequins fit perfectly fine at this height. So I'm going to use just a neutral sequin since I've got so much color in the background. And I'm going to put some in each of these little wells and just make sure that they would move. So I can't feel the top of them here with my finger. I'll show you from the side so that you can see what I'm talking about. Let me hold it up. You can see that the height of this is taller than the sequins, which is what we need to make sure they move freely. So before I glue that on, I'm going to go ahead and fit my pieces together. You could glue it on, put your pieces through there, but I feel like it's a little easier to work with this 1 layer here and then add your height with your other cover plate cutouts. So this is going to, you see I'm filling in the areas that were wells, so this is going to make this a flat back piece. Now we need to make our front window. So this is another reason that I left things. I've got a piece of acetate, I've got a cover plate, and then I have the pieces that are stacked up. So that's 4 pieces of the white right there. To make the look I'm going for, I'm going to need to sandwich the acetate between 2 of the cover plates. So I'm going to use this mirror ball, which is so fun, and this is going to be the front, and then I'm going to put the acetate in between. So I am using an actual like little roller of adhesive, and the reason is because, once again, these are very small lines. I don't really have a small adhesive that just fits right on it without showing up. And you could use glue, but you got to be careful on acetate with glue because sometimes it'll squeeze out onto your acetate, and then that clear window that you have of the acetate looks kind of blurry because it's got glue on it. So I'm using this. I'm going to put my piece of acetate down, which I cut close to size, but you can always trim it up. So I'm just making sure it covers and there's no holes because we don't want our little sequin pieces to be falling out. Now for the very front of this card, so I'm sandwiching between acetate. So I've got the white height, I guess you would say, of our card behind the acetate, and then I'm about to put this really fancy piece, the mirror ball, on the top of the acetate. So it's kind of sandwiched in between, and we'll line those up. And once again, I'm using an adhesive that is not glue because I don't want that adhesive to stick out. And then I'm carefully going along and making sure that everything lines up so that I'm not seeing any of that white that I used because that was all scrap paper. I'm only seeing my mirror ball, which looks amazing and is great sparkle. Now our window is ready. We just need to add some powder around the edges. You want to do this for any type of shaker card, and that's just to keep the little shaker pieces from sticking to the edges. I find it much easier to put my sequins in where they're going to go first, then set the top panel on top of it versus filling up the wells and trying to line up. So if I tried to put all of these sequins in the little wells that I have with my acetate, I would have to turn the card upside down to be able to put it together, and that makes it very difficult. So you want to put your sequins where they're going to be. I know that they'll shake around, but just kind of in the middle of that area, and then you can easily line this up on top of it where it's not sticking to the sequins, and it really makes your shaker cards a lot easier. So this is how the shaker, I'll show you the final product, but we're going to go on to our next way to use a cover die. So hopefully this shows you can always create a shaker card without foam tape. So if your lines are too skinny for your foam tape, great things that we can do. Next, we're going to emboss with a cover plate die. This card is going to be a more masculine Valentine's card, so I'm going to use some brighter colors, and we're going to emboss and do just a little bit of ink blending, and it makes for a very simple, easy card, but at the same time, it looks like you put a lot of work into it. I love using black soot on a colored cardstock. It just makes that spotlight effect. So I'm just going around the edges and darkening them a little bit. And then I'm going to show you the sandwich to emboss with a die. So we're going to be using a Platinum 6, and I'll show you how to do that. So I have the base of my Spellbinders platform, and I have the die. And then I have the piece of paper. Now this paper is face down so that the part that you see is my ink blended area. I'm going to use a little piece of tape. If you've got a good magnet or something that can hold it, that's fine. But because I cut this piece exactly to the size of that cover plate, I'm going to use tape to be safe. Next, I'm going to be using the embossing mat, and I'm going to carefully put it on top. Last is the embossing plate. So it's die, paper, brown embossing mat, bluish or purplish embossing plate. And then I'm going to run this through and I'll show you what it does. So here's how it looks. I'm always amazed at this process. So you can see that's from the back. Now let's take it and let's look at the front of this. Remember, we did a little ink blending and kind of gave it that highlighted area in the middle. It just looks so good. So all that's left to do for this card is I cut out a piece from the mirror ball, and I'm going to put it on the front right here. And then I'm going to add a sentiment, and this card is done. And even though that mirror ball is shiny, it really looks great on a masculine card. I usually don't put a whole lot of shiny elements, but just having that small amount looks great. This is going to end up being, I believe, my husband's Valentine's card because he loves just a little bit of glitter, but those bold colors. So next, we are going to do inlay die cutting, which we've done, but we're also going to create our own gold cardstock. And I'm telling you, this is the coolest process, and I learned this recently from Ravati, who's a friend of mine who's been on design teams with me, and she has her own YouTube channel and Instagram. So it's RP Shutterbrug. Give her a little shout out for teaching me this. Okay, so here's the process. I cut this out of watercolor paper and I did not add any water to the background. I added a little bit of water to my metallic gold paint and just a little bit to my brushes. And now I'm going in and I'm adding more coats. So trying to get it to where it looks very metallic, almost like a solid gold. You do not need much water to do this. You do need a little patience, and it always helps to let one layer dry and then go back over it with even more. So this is going to give me that gold shimmery look to this, which looks like gold cardstock without having to waste a large piece of gold cardstock. If I wasn't going to use my side pieces and I just wanted this little outline, this is a way to do it, and I think it just looks really cool too. I'm going to zoom in and see if you can see. Okay, so here it is. Yes, it looks a little messy right now, but I'm going to add lots of layers and it just looks so pretty. I'll show you the final card so you can see, but it looks really good. I do add several layers of this gold, so now it's dry. I'm just adding another quick layer just to make it very bright. So I take this gold line and I go around this heart as well. So I'm going to start with ink blending it, which is spun sugar. I have heat embossed my sentiment so I can easily just wipe that off and make it look nice and black again. It's black ink with clear embossing powder. And let me show you how you can go around an object and highlight it in gold. So for this, I used a thicker brush, and that's because I want to make a line around this heart that is visible, and it was a little too hard to do with that teeny tiny brush. So once again, I'm not using much water, and I'm loading as much gold as I can on this brush, and then I'm carefully going around it. Now, if you make your line too thick, it's just a different look, no big deal. I'm just trying to keep mine kind of thin, and I'm going around to show you that it just makes a little bit more impact on the card. Let me show you the final card. Okay, look at how cool that gold looks. I think it just looks awesome with this card. So let me show you how I put it together. I started, when I do inlay die cutting, I love to emboss a piece with the die. So we've already done that with our blue card, but I will go over the sandwich again, and then I'm just gonna put everything together like a puzzle. Now this makes a 1-layer card. I am gonna pop up the center just to give it a little bit more dimension and add a few embellishments, but that's really it. It's like putting a puzzle together, and it's so fun. Wanted to pop this up one more time for you, and of course I will put it in the description so that you will have it, but that is the sandwich that I used for the Platinum 6. Now I'm going to show you just putting pieces together. I did ink blend all these pieces with some spun sugar and did a little splatter on them, and remember, I've outlined everything in gold. It looks so cute. Okay, so here's that final card. I love how the gold turned out, and this is our inlaid die cutting card. So it's a pretty flat card, very easy to send. I did add a couple of sequins to it just to dress it up a little bit, but it's going to be an easy one to mail. So we did the inlaid die cutting on this one, then we did a shaker card with no foam, and we embossed with a cover plate. So I hope this gave you lots of ideas of how to use these dies so they don't just sit around in your drawer, and I hope you enjoyed this quick glance at some of the new products from Simon Says Stamp. Make sure if you haven't done it yet, you hit the like and subscribe button, and here's a video I think that you would enjoy on my channel next. Have a great day, guys. Bye.